is co-founder and executive director of the ETH AI Center. And this is the second panel this month that we find ourselves on together. It's a pleasure. Alex has a remarkable energy about him, twice awarded as Entrepreneur of the Year in Switzerland. He co-founded the ETH spin-off, Dakuda, and sold it in 2017 to the augmented reality pioneer Magic Leap, where he was responsible for the building up of 2 Swiss R&D centers on computer vision and advanced photonics. Alex brings in the valuable perspective of combining research, industry, and entrepreneurship. Alex's presentation today will cover critical questions around the timing and the applications of AR and the big kahuna, the implications of transitioning to an always-on world. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much, Shalini. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk with you today about the combination about AI on AR, and especially also what it means for us. What can we do now? It's interesting, there's always a combination of a lot of very promising things, sometimes scary things, but also things, yeah, this will never happen, and so on. So let's find a path in between. If there's something that's truly the next thing coming after smartphones, what can we do to take part in this, that we don't miss the boat, right? If you look at how many cloud companies, mobile phone companies, and so on. So for many areas, I think now if you think it's obvious, but back then it was not. So this could be the next thing where we want to be part of, and also especially from my personal background, the combination of what can startups contribute in collaborating with academia and industry. So I want to talk about AI glasses. Before I jump into the combination of AI in that field, let me say a little bit about the ETH AI Center, which I'm leading and building up. So, of course, research in this field has been going on for decades. This is nothing new for ETH and for most other institutions as well. But what is different now? Different now is that things have emerged to be very fragmented. Very strong research position, but we need a lot more collaboration across the board. You see many areas where currently systems are failing and are in the public. You see, for instance, chatbots going wrong, autonomous cars not detecting street signs because they have stickers on them, and so on. So there are a lot of problems like this that completely set back the whole field. So as a mission for us with the AI Center, we want to bring together researchers from AI foundations and team them up with researchers on AI applications. Only if we co-evolve basically the 2 things simultaneously, we can achieve faster and more successful breakthroughs. So this is the main driver behind it. So we want to basically make sure we're leading the world towards trustworthy, accessible, and inclusive AI systems. So these are, in our mind, the biggest blockers for AI adoption. It's not getting more data or anything like this. Like, if people don't trust in systems, they won't adopt them, and so on. So this is something that we need to tackle. How are we going to do it? Is we're forming with the AI Center Central Hub for AI, this co-evolution of AI foundations and application areas. And we also have a physical center, which sounds a little bit weird in times of COVID, but we believe that it's also important to foster collaboration that was not planned, that is spontaneous, and also to bring people from different disciplines out of their normal comfort into a situation where it's easier to collaborate. So we set up also a special program. So it's one of the premier spaces where you can, for instance, combine AI and health and do a PhD on that by getting 2 advisors, one from the medical area, one from the, for instance, computer science area. And we have a very strong focus on research all the way to startups and industry, because there are a lot of gaps in between. We know that if you publish something, the innovation doesn't go itself into a completely new company. It needs people, and so we have a very, very talent-focused approach on how we enable the young talent to actually make an impact on the world. This is an impression of the faculty that is behind the AI Center. 96 professors, around 200 postdocs, 1,400 PhD students. So it's one of the largest AI centers in the world. And it's something that combines all 16 departments of ETH. So from architecture to social sciences to mathematics, which is really beautiful that we were able to bring together this amazing crowd. Areas in which we are active are matching with where ETH already has strong focus areas, but also new fields. And we set it up in this collaboration, and augmented reality and human-centered AI is one of the topics. And this is basically why I wanted to talk a little bit more about why do we care about this topic so much. So let's jump to AR glasses. So smartphones, as Shalini mentioned, we have them in our pocket. These are computers which we pull out when we need something. We need a direction, we need a translation, and so on. If you have glasses, and this is your computer, then potentially it's always with you. It sees the world from your perspective. It can help you to do things more efficiently, and it's also different interaction with you. It's not like these push notifications where it rings and then you pick it up. It can, in a more subtle way, interact with you. And what is the intelligence driving that? Obviously, there are a lot of AI systems in the background. This is why it's so important to bring these two things together. One of the breakthroughs was already mentioned, why we feel it's something that can happen soon, and that is today, most of the devices that we have all have like panel-based displays. So basically, the size of the device defines how big the screen is. But there are a number of breakthroughs where you can basically project light directly onto your retina that mimics or creates the perception that this screen is also real. Right? So if we understand the human vision system, and if we match that in a most realistic way in terms of like brightness and also like focus and many other things, then you can create an image that's indistinguishable from a normal screen. Today, the systems, maybe you saw like there are various devices out there that look a little bit more like sunglasses, so you can optically see through, but they have shaded things. The reason is simply the brightness levels are not there yet to match it. So this is one thing that, for instance, also needs to be solved over the next part. But it's very important to understand the principle is completely different than virtual reality. In virtual reality, we take you out from your real world. You have this nice helmet on, you shield it off, everything computer generated. Here the part is that the computer completely disappears into a regular pair of glasses, and so you normally see what you see with your glasses, and basically digital signals are mixed on top. So this is something that I found quite interesting. When we moved from big personal computers to mobile phones, one of the killer apps was that suddenly we had internet on the go. We had apps that we can take with us. You don't need to go to the office to do something. You have it all the way with you, right? So the mobile aspect. So why do people think the next part will be glasses? Before I answered it, it was very interesting. What are the most vocal companies in that part that you think, who's working on that topic? I mean, you saw already a little bit, but some people were surprised about the statement coming out from one of the largest social networks, right? So this was something that people completely found surprising, where Mark Zuckerberg said, technology platform of the 2010s was the mobile phone, while I expect phones still to be our primary devices throughout most of this decade. At some point in the 2020s, we will get breakthrough augmented reality glasses. And Ottmar mentioned it a little bit before. These are not predictions, these are financial muscles at play. You don't make a prediction if you're not sure that you can contribute to something like that. It's very important to see that, because from a consumer point of view, if something is not available to buy this Christmas, it's probably never going to happen. But from a technology point of view, a time frame of 5 or 7 or 10 years is actually not that far away. That means if we're building next generation chips and technologies for that, we have maybe just 2 or 3 generations until we are at that point. So I take you an example. If you've never tried something like AR glasses, I take an example which maybe most of you know from a different field. Like, how does the interaction change? For instance, most of you have already used a mobile phone to navigate in your car. So you have it somewhere attached, and then you drive, but then you always need to look at your navigation system, right? So you're always distracted, you're always disconnected from where you are. A different way to realize it, and this is something which almost all high-end cars have in there, are heads-up display. So you see basically, you look straight out in front, you see basically information or navigation information there, but there's one big drawback on this as well. It's still hovering in mid-air, so you still, while you're looking at that, you still need to focus on that particular part. So it's not fully integrated with where you normally looking, right? So this is always at a fixed distance. So newer things that are being worked on also in the car part are like to track basically where your eyes are looking, and then basically that it looks seamlessly integrated, that you cannot see that this is something that's superimposed on top. And this is just an example, again, how the distraction levels are completely different. Here, you're sometimes completely distracted because you look away. Here, it's a little bit better, and this is where it's seamlessly integrated in your normal vision type. So this is just to illustrate you also one of the big differences. So where we want to go is, like you saw before, bigger AR headsets, right? So they are, the bigger ones are maybe 600 grams, the lighter ones 300, 150. Normal glasses, when they are heavy, are around the area of 30 grams, right? This means that there's more of a 10x reduction that we still need to go, that everyone says these are normal glasses. Why does it matter? Very simply, no one wants to wear a computer on their face. It looks cool for a convention, but basically we want the computer to completely disappear. That's one of the key elements that we need to achieve, because otherwise you have something that's in front of you, of interacting with other people that are next to you. And this is something that we have not been able to achieve. One example which is visually getting closer is what Facebook is pushing with the project Aria. It looks a lot more like sports glasses. But this prototype has cameras and eye tracking and all of the interesting things in there, but it does not have a display yet. But still, it shows you a little bit where the direction is going. So one concern that I saw, and what was also one of the things why I was excited that we have this session, is there seems to be a lot of talk and investments in that field, but I have not seen a lot of movement in Europe. Like, what are the big players that take this as an opportunity if they missed smartphones to go into that field? Then one example, tying it back to the computer vision problems that Ottmar also showed earlier. So there are a lot of interaction things. So if this is our new computer, we don't have a touch screen. So we need to think of what's the new level of input. How does the system understand in what context I am? And this is an example. Here you see the cameras from the glasses, how they basically track how you move in real world. So this is actually a video feed, and then again, this is something which is a visual mock-up. So this is not real, but it shows you again something about what use cases and how Facebook imagines how this will be integrated into your everyday life. So it's interesting that a lot of social networks and companies that make money with advertising are interested in that field, but that also concerns me a little bit, because it's something that it will be a more human-centric computing paradigm, and I don't want that I'm providing even more data to the companies. I want that it amplifies ultimately what we're doing. So this is also something that I care about. What's interesting is there are a lot of ideas on what you need to do, because the question is, what do we need to achieve to get this threshold? So when do we start replacing our phones? Well, the basic condition is indistinguishable from normal eyewear. If you cannot distinguish it anymore from normal glasses, so you should not have any hesitation putting it on, right? Then it should be physiologically correct. So this means something that you can wear it with comfort. So the brightness levels adapt, the focus levels. So later in the panel, we also have Thomas from Serial, a startup in Lausanne, trying to crack some of the hard problems on the display side. But this is something that is not solved yet. And also, since it's much smaller, you have completely different power budgets, battery budgets, and so on. So you need to be 7 to 8 times more efficient than what you have with a mobile phone. And still, people expect a lot of the functionality. And as I mentioned, one of the elements is also that you want to trust this. If this is something that has sensors built in, you want that it tracks the position but does not stream your data somewhere without you knowing. So ultimately, this is my assessment of where we are today. With all the nice videos, I think we're still pretty early, right? So we're not at the iPhone yet of making the transition from the classical phone to the smartphone. But we have already taken a few really significant steps that we understand that this is possible and that it's now about getting the right pieces together and making the steps forward. Let me talk a little bit about use cases, because I think that's important. What are things that are done today, which are maybe a little bit further out, and what's ahead? So early use cases that are very obvious are things which are very, very high value. So for instance, if you want to get support over a long distance, you just put on the glasses and you can plug in the support of an expert and you save the cost of a flight. Is a huge value. So you can pay a lot for a device and still save that. Other part also in everything around 3D visualization. Why do you want a 2D screen to visualize a 3D model? It's a very obvious case. And why do you want to build physical models? Other examples are training. So you can make training in real-world environments repeatable, which is also quite nice. And then also a number of parts on the medical side for visualizing more. So there, for instance, is also a huge value that if you look in a modern surgery room, you have a lot of monitors, right? So you always look at the different monitors. So similar like to the driving example, if I'm working with the patient here, why do I want to always do this, right? It's a lot safer, better if you co-align this where you're working ultimately. So these are some of the use cases that are currently widely developed and tested and tried out. And they make sense, right? But as you see, these use cases, they work all with big headsets because it doesn't matter if someone wears something like this during a surgery. It's not an all-day application yet. What's the next level? So this brings me a little bit to the talk also from CEO. So one thing is really how can we make collaboration and co-presence much easier? So CEO was showing a lot of the challenges which makes it hard to do it and why we're not there yet. I take two examples of showing a little bit what we want and something where we are really today where you can use it. So this is an example here where you see that someone joins basically a meeting, so to say, over distance. I hope you can see it. So they put the device on in that case. Then they appear as a 3D visualization in that part. So that looks really amazing. We know that from many Hollywood films and so on. So this is one part that we ultimately want to enable, but we're not fully at this level yet. But you can also see that it's not just business applications, but also social applications and so on. So I think this is truly one part that is amazing to push forward. The next thing that I wanted to show you is, so this is an application that you can already try out today. And actually, so to be fair, like there are a lot of things in there which can be done better, but it's actually, for many things, a lot better than a video conference. So you can, for instance, jointly go in a meeting and post it on a whiteboard. Yeah? But still, you will see a lot of the visual and plausibility and consistency problems that CEO was talking about. Let's see if I can play that. So basically, two people wearing that are on completely different sides of the globe. And then you have basically, this is from the view from one of the person. And here you see the avatar. You see no legs and doesn't fully fit in, and is also not very lively, right? So there are many things that we detect that are not right. So things like body language and so on are not properly transported in that part. You see the behavior is a little bit awkward and so on. So, but just to make it very tangible, why is the research so important? Because ultimately, when we have a meeting with another person, we transport a lot of things with our body language, and we are close to have a platform that can do it, but a lot of the problems on understanding and human motion and modeling that in a plausible way are still in research. But this is something where we also need to make sure that we are constantly on there. Another part is, which I want to show you, is like people got very excited about having speakers at home. They can give commands and voice assistants, Siri, and so on. So this is also a field which rapidly evolves. I want to show one non-augmented reality case, just that you see a little bit also of the opportunities and challenges. So maybe you have heard of the example from Google, this Google Duplex. Let's see if the voice works.
The Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So this is just to show you, this is super impressive if you see it the first time. But then the question is, so there are a lot of questions that you suddenly have to ask, right? Do we need to have a new law that someone that is like a synthetically generated part, it identifies them and says, hey, I'm not a real person, I'm just an AI calling you to schedule this. So there are a lot of implications on the social side, but then there are also a lot of things where we see demos like that and we feel, oh, that's already fully rolled out. If you look a little bit on what's behind, this was 2017 or 18. So basically they had a lot of cases where I think like in more than 25%, it produced a completely wrong result, right? And this sounds quite good, right? So it works in 3 out of 4 times and so on. But in reality, this is not good enough yet to build a product on it. And this is something which you see in many AI systems, that there are a lot of questions on the social interactions, and it ties back to the trust element as well. Are they robust? Is it okay? Are the way they implement it, and so on? And so currently, you don't have that available. But of course, there's still a lot of research going on. That doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that it probably takes more time than most people think at that time. But that's one part of a completely different interaction, or what basically an assistant could do for you. Another example where colleagues of mine were working while I was at Magic Leap is doing the opposite side. So this is using voice. And this was more, how can we use...
the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background.
Sorry, can you click on the other one? Thank you. So this was the opposite side. So there, basically, the project lead spent a lot of time developing realistic humans for Hollywood, where you have like months of rendering to produce the high quality. So this was much more about using body language and eye contact. And it's actually not so easy to model that in a plausible way, that basically you want a reaction that's real, that you have a concept for physical closeness and so on, that you react in the right way in that. So there's a lot of work that went into that, trying out that. It's still also just a concept at this stage, but what I found very powerful is that it shows you a different way of, in the future, when you have the visual input of something like glasses, you can also use suddenly interactions that are nonverbal. You can use body language and so on, which you did not have before. And this is something that normally, if you think about fitness, you need a motivational kick. Your real fitness trainer, they don't bombard you with words all the time. Sometimes, if you have the shouting type, then yes. But most of the time, it's also a simple change in their body language that tells you you should try harder, right? And these things to use to our advantage is something that is something that I believe will be one of the killer apps coming in the future. So I want to close with a couple of more crazy examples and things to think about, because we are also heading to the break and then to the panel discussion later on. So first, I start with something simple. So maybe some of you tried it. That's already, I think, like 10 years old, that you can use your mobile phone and just it automatically translates everything that you see. So just a little bit of a video on that.
2, 1, 2, and flip it. Nice.
So this is not a new application, but I believe it will also completely change the way we use it, because right now I rarely use that to translate, because it just takes too much effort to take out my phone, open the app, use it, and so on. So if that can always run in the background, that whenever I see something in a language that I don't speak and it translates, then it's something way more subtle to feed in. So this is something that's very powerful. And why I have it here is because at the end of the day, you need to keep that mantra in the mind that, so the reality is the physical and the digital. So the moment you perceive it, you're part of that experience. So this is also creating memories. This is also a feeling real, and your body is also reacting. So it's a highly important thing that we take seriously, right? There are a number of interesting things which you can do. Like there are examples helping you to learn you know, how to dance in a different way, or think about your workout outside. Instead of like just running and doing a little bit, you're playing actually Super Mario or something like that in the park and jumping there, making it maybe more fun over time, right? Then also what I found interesting, if you have cameras that perceive the world, they could also recognize what you do. So, for instance, if you're eating more than you set your own goals to, it could suggest that, hey, why don't you want to add 2 miles to your run? And other things that it's also combined with temperature sensing and so on, or combining the spatial intelligence also with audio, that you say you want to mute everyone around and just focus on that part. So what I found most interesting about these examples is from who the examples were shown. So this is from another conference that was held by Facebook in 2017. And this is also to show you a little bit on if we want applications like that to shape them in, let's say, more privacy-preserving, more people-focused way. I think there's tons of opportunities where it's easier and a strong competitive advantage if you create it with a company here with the values that they have here, instead of being an advertising company. So this brings me back to why here. So it's great to meet everyone here, and we should not underestimate the network that is already built. I just take one example. So I co-founded the computer vision startup Dakuda, but just to show you a little bit of what did that trigger. So it's already quite a network. So there were 6 new startups founded. There are basically 2 big tech centers to Switzerland, so Facebook Reality Labs and Magic Leap. Then I went back to ETH, and others have strengthened existing companies. So this is just one tiny startup and the impact on there. I think we have, with Switzerland, the global mindset, but also close enough network to bring things together. And probably you have seen that before as well. Just to remind, like, who is already here. Like, we have a lot of the big tech companies that are here. I think now is an opportunity to bring in also some more companies that are not the tech companies, because if this is truly becoming the next personal computer after smartphones, then it's affecting everybody, not just the tech companies. And this is something where I would like to invite you to discuss further, and thank you very much for your attention.